It's been a 4-year hiatus for the Risborough District Model Railway Club, but this year they return with Railex 2023. We start the show with Grindley Brook, an O-gauge layout, which is based on a fictional station set on the now closed ex-LNWR line between Whitchurch and Chester in Shropshire in the period 1954 to 1964. Although there was never a large station with a yard at Grindley Brook, but just a wooden halt, the location was chosen as the point at which the railway crossed the Llangollen Canal. The whole of the scenic area is scratch-built from photos and plans of actual LNWR buildings, signals and infrastructure, which together creates a typical LNWR station of the early 1870s, updated by the LMS and ultimately passing into the ownership of BR. Being on the boundaries of the London Midland and Western regions, the trains are predominantly London Midland, but with a sprinkling of Western region workings. The scenic track is all hand-built from C&L components to the finer standards of 31.5mm gauge, with the track layout being determined by the overall curve of the layout. Control is exercised by the signalman using a miniature lever frame with full mechanical interlocking, requiring the drivers to follow the signals. Here, emerging from the tunnel, is an ex-war department Austerity 280, number 90434, holding a rake of empty milk wagons. Grindley Brook is a layout that I have seen before at the London Festival Railway Modelling last year, and it's a wonderful layout. There's always plenty going on. Trains just passing in succession all the time, probably a lot more frequently than they did in the real location. And as the Austerity departs the scene with its rake of empties, in the opposite direction a rake of loaded coal wagons at the hands of an Ivan diesel passes by towards the tunnel. Next is Wendover, an OO gauge layout. This layout was originally conceived in the 1980s, when the owner was living in Hertfordshire. As a great Central Railway enthusiast, he was looking for somewhere on the old main line into Marylebone. Due to his work commitments and the need for a suitable room, he was unable to start building the layout until about 5 years ago. It was very fortunate that he had the original set of photographs, as apart from the up-station building on the shoulder of Mutton Public House, none of the original The track plan follows the prototype with only 2 exceptions. The farthest siding in the yard is essentially parallel to the adjacent coal siding, whereas it should diverge from it, and also be rather longer. Regretfully, to have made it correct would have resulted in baseboards being too deep. The other divergence is that the main line to the north of the station should continue straight, Unfortunately, whilst the railway room is quite large, it's not infinite, so the model curves round towards the storage yard at the rear. They required a change to the topography to provide the necessary separation between the main line and the Holton branch. Here we see a Great Central A5 arrive at the station with a pair of milk tankers and a set of quad coaches. Next is Kensington Addison Road in Ogage. Addison Road is nowadays known as Kensington Olympia on the busy West London route between Willesden and Clapham Junction. Because this was a joint line formerly involving the LNWR, GWR, London Brighton South Coast Railway, and the LSWR, it had proved to be a good choice for a club project. Their O-gauge fine-scale model shows the station as it was around 1925, enabling to run trains in both pre- and post-grouping liveries. As you face the layout, you are standing on the site of the Olympia Exhibition Halls, with Willesden Junction and North off to your left. At the right-hand end of the layout, the tracks disappear southwards under Hammersmith Road Bridge towards Earl's Court and Clapham Junction. The terraced houses of Russell Road form a natural backdrop to the station. Next is another layout I've seen before, Purgatory Peak, an ON30 gauge layout. This is on the basis of the railroads around Purgatory Peak, which were conceived in the euphoria of the mining boom of the late 19th century, when deposits of several heavy metals, including gold and silver, had been discovered. The booming American economy created ever-increasing demands, and pack horses were simply not quick enough to deliver. And so the Dinmore and Colorado Western was born. It's now the late 1930s, and times are hard. As for the railroad, it just keeps plodding on. Nothing much changes in this part of the world, unless it has to. Purgatory Peak was selected for the area to model, not for its scenic beauty, it has none, nor for its significance as a milestone in railway history. It was simply chosen because getting to this point, not only on the original railway, but also on the model, had been sheer purgatory. The upper level was the original Denver and Colorado Western line, but has long since been bypassed by subsequent improvements to the system following an acquisition by the D&RGW. The mines served by the improbable Zigzag are struggling following the Great Depression, but despite their best efforts, the D&RGW have not been able to dispense with the branch under the mine to oblivion. We move on to Wantage Tramway. This layout is a 4mm P4 model of the Wantage Tramway as it appeared in the 1920s. At this period, there were regular passenger tram services between Wantage Town and Wantage Road, Great Western Railway Station. The Wantage Tramway also had a freight carrying contract with the GWR to deliver and pick up all goods around the town and district. This resulted in there being at least 3 return goods trains each day along the tramway. On market days, there would be extra trams run and even cattle trains. Because of this, the owner of the layout decided to portray Market Day for extra interest. He started the layout about 10 years ago. There's been so many buildings that needed to be researched and measured and built, some of which were demolished 50 to 70 years ago, it has taken this long to get to this stage. Though the layout's still not quite finished, it is an absolute delight.
For you, isn't it? Well, to see other donations. Yeah. Okay.
The two things I thought the latter.
We move on to Old Parrock in OO gauge. Old Parrock is a small halt and coal yard on a fictitious line at the northern edge of Ashdown Forest in East Sussex. The name is derived from a small settlement in the vicinity. It is assumed that the line was originally built as a light railway. Traffic is sparse, requiring short passenger trains and minimal freight trains. The layout was built as an entrant in the MRJ cameo competition and is designed to fit a shed space of 7 foot 4 inches. The owner of the layout says a particular interest was to build models of the watermill and mill cottage. The original buildings were at Tablehurst Farm in Forest Row, near East Grinstead. The mill was demolished in 1933, but the cottage still exists. The coal office is a typical London-Brighton South Coast Railway goods lockup, and the station building is a reduced version of those found on the Kent and East Sussex Railway. The railway runs in 2 periods: Southern Railway in the early 1930s and, as can be seen today, the pre-grouping era, when trains from both the London Brighton South Coast Railway and the South East Coast Railway may be seen. Now we come to the Somerset and Dorset, with Bridgewater in O gauge. The line from Bridgewater to Eddington was opened on the 21st of July 1890, being built by an independent company, the Bridgewater Railway Company. The station building was built of local brick and had the appearance of an LSWR design. It stood at right angles to the 2-bay island platform, upon which a canopy was built covering half its length. The goods yard, complete with shed, had ample facilities to handle many commodities, including coal, bricks, tiles, and livestock. A single-road engine shed of brick construction was also built, together with a 50-foot turntable in front of its entrance. The shed, although extended in 1898 to accommodate 2 locomotives, was not used as stable locomotives overnight, and was subsequently leased to the Co-op in 1928 for use as a store. When the line to Eddington was finally closed in 1954, a new spur was laid from the S&D yard to connect it to the GWR docks branch. The goods yard remained in use until the 7th of July 1962, and the docks branch finally closed on the 2nd of January 1967. The layout is set in the Edwardian period of 1904, with all the stock being modified kit or scratch-built items representative of the glorious Prussian blue days of the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway. The buildings and structures are accurate models of the prototypes, built from drawings and photographs, and are scratch-built from laser-cut MDF and plastic card. Operations are to a sequence representing, in compressed form, a typical day's working on the branch during the golden age of the Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway. Next, another layout I've seen, this year in fact, at the Abingdon Model Show. It's Modbury in 2mm fine scale, which is a layout representing a Great Western might have been through station as it might have appeared in 1906. The layout has a small turntable type fiddle yard at each end of a scenic section. The stock is either kit or scratch built, portraying the Edwardian period. The track is built to represent Brunel's Bulk Road. It has been scratch built using HO PCB sleeper strip and rail gauges from the 2mm Association. Buildings are scratch built from plasticard and are principally based on South Devon prototypes on the Morton Hampstead branch, the exception being the signal box, which comes from Bodmin General. The locomotives are all either completely scratch built or converted from N-gauge models utilising 2mm Associated edged chassis. Coaching and goods stock are also either kit or scratch built. Now we move to Penworth in N-gauge. Penworth is a Pennonesque GWR terminus in N-gauge. The layout has been built to show that similar standards as those that can be seen at the Pendon Museum can be achieved in 2mm scale. The buildings are scratch-built copies of buildings on the Pendon's Vale seat, but scaled down to 2mm. Penworth also features hands-free shunting for added realism. And although this layout wasn't very large, it was almost impossible to get near, and I think that's because the time people spent examining this layout. The level of modelling and detail on this was absolutely superb, and you can see why it is trying to emulate Pendon in 2mm scale. It's absolutely fantastic, and if you get a chance to see it at a show, you must see it. This next layout I almost missed because it was so small, and if it wasn't for my son, I would have walked past it completely. Carl of Lochalsh in 2mm fine scale. It was originally built in Barcelona as a micro layout capable of being transported via box files. It was first exhibited in 2010 at the Burgess Hill Model Railway Club annual exhibition, having been flown in by hand luggage the day before. The layout has since had two refurbishments and is now formed of two separate sections, a scenic one measuring approximately 680mm and a storage one measuring approximately 780mm, giving an overall length of 1460mm. The intention was to try and capture an extract of the Carl of Lochalsh through the inclusion of the bridge ramp, station and quayside. The back seat is formed by use of a panoramic photo stitch of the location, which has been printed onto vinyl and applied to a thin perspex sheet. The layout era begins in the late 70s to capture the overlap between Class 24s and Class 26s, with a gradual replacement by the Class 37/4s.
Yeah, no, I was going to ask you. Chairs. It's just a
This model show is becoming to be a bit like a school reunion with another old friend, Freshwater. The advantage is, though, with the other shows, I always found Freshwater very difficult to get near. At this time, it was completely open and free. We had waited until the afternoon, and as it's in Stoke Mandeville Sports Hall, it was getting a little hot and sweaty in there. Freshwater was the western terminus of the 12-mile-long Freshwater Yarmouth and Newport Railway on the Isle of Wight, opened in 1888. The Southern Railway lengthened the platform, removed the loco shed and carriage shed, and modified the track layout slightly in 1927. But the line was never very successful and closed as early as 1953. The model was built to 1:152 scale, using components and standards of the 2mm Scales Association. Train control uses DCC, and the layout uses servos to operate points, uncouplers, and signals, controlled using Merg C-bus components. The layout plan was based on large-scale ordnance survey maps, with no compression required. Buildings and scenery are based on all the contemporary photographs so far collected. Although some areas are still something of a mystery, several buildings have been 3D printed by Shapeways from 3D computer models that the owner has created. And now we move on to something a little more modern. In fact, the only modern layout of the exhibition, but one of my favourites, probably because it was set in the 1980s, and that's Charwelton, into the 80s, in OO gauge. The layout was originally built by the Wolverhampton Model Railway Club and exhibited as a 50s/60s steam, but the new owners run it as a warm summer Saturday in the 1980s. The rail station in Northamptonshire closed in the 60s after the decision was taken to abolish the line, one that is seen by many to have been short-sighted. If it had stayed open, it would have been the ideal route for freight today, with its larger loading gauge. All the stock on the layout is detailed and weathered using reference photos to provide a natural look. Nothing weathers the same in real life, so why would it be the same on a model railway layout? Here we see a Class 47, number 47407, on a cross-country working, passing by through the station. In the opposite direction is a Class 20, with a large number on the side, very unusual, 20008, working speedlink freight. Class 56, which had been patiently waiting in the loop for some time with an empty merry-go-round working, finally departs, whilst in the opposite direction, the Class 20 passes with a freight peak. '20s and 47s seem to be the main staple of this layout, as 47050 now passes through with an engineer's work.
Yes? No, actually. Yes. What they're doing there, that's intriguing.
And as the 47 departs, on the opposite line, the passenger working in the hands of a first generation DNU arrives at the station. And now for our final layout, Hope under Dinmore, in EM gauge, by the South Hants Model Railway Club. Hope under Dinmore has some history. It's the Shrewsbury and Hereford Railway Company that started it with an Act of Parliament in 1846. The line covered a distance of 50.5 miles and work commenced in 1850. It opened from Shrewsbury to Ludlow on the 21st of April 1852. The Hereford section of the line opened on the 30th of July 1853 for goods traffic and passengers in December. In 1887, the traffic levels on the line were increased by the opening of the Severn Tunnel, and in May 1892, the conversion of the broad gauge lines to standard gauge to the west of Exeter meant even longer distance through surfaces on the line. The layout is based on a fixture station that is soon to be at the north end of the tunnel, close to the village of Hope under Dinmore. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please click the like button. If you want to see more, click the subscribe button, and hopefully I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching.